I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. All right. Happy Thursday, guys. Welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. My special guest tonight is Kenny Ballantyne. He is a healthcare activist for Medicare for All, and he is a filmmaker. Welcome, Kenny. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So, Kenny, you have been working on a documentary called Healing Us. This is about the need for Medicare for All. Why did you decide to do this documentary? Because I know this has been a lot of work for you.
Yeah, it goes back more than 2 years now. We were in the thick of the pandemic when I began. Healthcare and the need for it has always been on the forefront of my mind. As an independent filmmaker, a self-employed person, I've got a wife and 4 kids. Healthcare and the lack thereof has been a constant story in my own personal life. But it really came to the forefront. I was collaborating on another film project that had to do with police violence on Black America. And in conversations and interviews I was shooting, this topic kept coming up over and over again as people were talking about in a police-free America of what that might look like in the future. What are the things that we need, that are missing, that need to step up and fill all the voids in society? And healthcare was a part of every conversation I was having. And I'm like, I really want to tackle this with the right story comes around. And then I was listening to a podcast one day and I heard an interview with Laura Fielding of the Red Berets for Medicare for All. And I learned about these ladies up in Washington crocheting hats and knitting hats as a symbol of solidarity for the movement for universal healthcare. And I thought, that's cute. I would love to make a movie about them. And it literally started as this little small idea and snowballed into a pretty massive scope project that covers stories from all over the country, from every walk of life, but really has a focus on the grassroots and the movement for universal healthcare.
Awesome. Well, we have a trailer for Healing Us with us tonight. So I want to go ahead and show the trailer. And Susan Sarandon, for those who don't realize, like Susan Sarandon is actually narrating this trailer. So here we go.
We are governed in American healthcare by the for-profit interests.
In a typical year in modern America, approximately 68,000 people will die due to lack of adequate health care.
Health insurance companies are in the business to make money, and they will do whatever they can to avoid paying claims.
The fallout is they would rather make a sale than take care of a patient.
If me and Danny lived in Canada, if me and Danny lived in Mexico, me and Danny would still be living in Canada or Mexico.
They're not just numbers, they're people. They're ripped from us because of our greedy healthcare system that puts profits before people.
This is a profit-driven business. They can be sued if they are not acting in the best interest of their shareholders, not in the best interest of the patients.
So the problem is greed.
The Democrats and the Republicans are both in the pockets of Big Pharma and the insurance lobby.
We're at a real tipping point.
The people in this country know the system is broken.
It's time for change.
Very well done, Kenny. Very well done. And one of the doctors here, I don't know if people are aware, if everyone is aware of Dr. Joseph Jarvis, But he was actually a part of the Marches for Medicare for All. The interesting thing about him, let me just get it back to him for just a second here. This is Dr. Joseph Jarvis. The interesting thing about him is that he is actually a conservative that supports Medicare for All. And so having someone like him, his voice, push this message, I think is very important, because it goes to show you that, like, he's one of the people that he did the math. He's researched this multiple times. So he has also said that it's cheaper and it makes sense just to do it that way. But it's great to have someone who is on the other side of the aisle also advocate for this as well.
Yeah, I love Dr. Joe. There's probably a million other things that we disagree on, but we're able to have been able to work together throughout the whole film. And he makes this great case from a conservative perspective of why people on the other side of the aisle should be completely on board with universal health care as something that's fiscally responsible, morally and ethically correct, and constitutional as well. And so it's hard to deny in the world we're living in today, 2023 America. It's just really hard to say that healthcare should not be a human right.
That's right. And when is the documentary being released?
So we are premiering it next week, actually, in Tacoma, along with all the original Red Berets that helped start the journey. We're going to do a premiere on May 19th in Tacoma, Washington. We're following up with a big free community screening in Seattle the next day. Very shortly after that, it's going to be released online. Amazon and other streaming platforms, available on Blu-ray and DVD, but mostly we want to be showing this film in communities and colleges and small theaters all across the country. So if anyone has connection to those sort of venues and wants to work with us, reach out, and we want to come to you and show the movie.
How long is the movie?
It's 75 minutes. Yeah, so this is a bit more than.
I know, at least for my area, for the Boston area, Somerville Theater is known for showing like these types of films. It's more like an old school, like theater,
Cool.
retro kind of. But that's actually where I saw the Julian Assange documentary. So his brother and his father came here and they played the documentary at the Somerville Theater. So that's one of those places that's really cool for that. I can connect with you about that. But I want to show everyone the Twitter site here for Healing Us 2023 movie. Follow this on Twitter. Also, you can follow Kenny as well for updates. What I thought was really, really great about this documentary is all the people that came together for this. I don't think some people may not realize all the people involved. Like Brianna Joy Gray was a part of this, Ryan Knight, Justin Jackson, Dr. Dooley. Dr. Dooley is also a part of this as well. So it was a lot of people that participated in this documentary. And I think the cool thing is it's not just about we have this big name person in this documentary. It's also about giving the data in reference to healthcare and the healthcare industry in this country. I think is really important, because I think once people see the numbers, especially when it comes to medical debt, the cost of healthcare in this country, and how much cheaper Medicare for all could be, I think it's really hard to dispute it.
Absolutely. It was important for us to get those numbers across in a way that was engaging and not boring and not just like another numbers slideshow type of thing. So intertwining that with the stories of people from all over the country, in which I think is the most diverse collection of healthcare stories that have ever been put together in a movie before. So I do think we have something really special here.
When you were interviewing people, Kenny, listening to people's healthcare stories, was there anyone that really stood out to you in particular, looking back on it?
It's difficult to single out, but I guess I'll start with the first interview I shot for the whole movie, which was Scott Desnoyers. And we had lined up many interviews that day. And if I knew I was going to experience what I was about to experience with Scott, I don't know if I would have put him first, because it absolutely wrecked me emotionally. Many people who are on Twitter in this space might know about Scott and his story, but his son tragically lost his life to suicide after being denied a life-saving medication because he missed a $20 payment.
That's right.
Right. It was a very hard story to record and very hard to retell. It's hard to rewatch every time I show the film, but coming out of every screening we've done, Scott that's one of the stories that clearly sits with everyone. Yeah.
Right. Thank you for that question, Roger Meadows. Kenny, can you explain to the audience in a state with no income taxes or a public bank how you can pay for it? Thank you, Roger.
I'm assuming the question means at a state level. Is that what we're talking about? How to fund a state level? So there are many different solutions to that question. Either way, the funding for healthcare still largely comes from the federal government, even with the state-based initiatives that have been planned by some of the people we focus on in the film. And there are some other states that are going at it from more creative ways. Dr. Joe Jarvis is putting together a piece of legislation for passing single-payer healthcare in the state of Utah, of all places, which is wild. They're hoping to get that out to the ballot in 2026, I believe.
Wow.
But they're actually using a public endowment, a statewide endowment that already exists for healthcare, and redirecting those funds to a state-based system. So there's lots of different ways it can happen. The thing to recall is that in most of these instances where people are putting out legislation for a state-based system, they are getting the economic studies done ahead of time and proving that they have a fiscally responsible way of doing this. And in almost every case, a way that's going to save the state money instead of cost it more money. And if you want a more detailed answer than that, I'll have to refer you to some smarter people than me.
No, I think it's key that you get the data first and then you start to push for that, because we saw what happened in California. So I think, unfortunately, California is the example that a lot of people will point towards, right? Like, they had the votes to actually pass a single payer healthcare in California. And then at the last minute, like, big money came in and they decided not to vote on it at all. I think that's why, if you are in one of these states that's a ballot initiative state, I know Washington State is one, my state, Massachusetts, is one, we have to go about this a different way. So I'm curious. I'll have to reach out to Dr. Jarvis because I'm curious how he was able to get this going in Utah. But these things are very important because, as we've seen, it's a slow drag in Congress, obviously. And then we have a president that said he would not approve Medicare for all. He'd veto it if it came across his desk. So I think we need to be fighting on all fronts. And I've been saying this for a long time. Like, we need to have more than one strategy. I did see that Ro Khanna is he's trying to implement some type of legislation to cancel medical debt. Did you hear about that?
I know. I only know a little bit about it and not enough to make any real commentary on it right now. But Ro has typically been a pretty good supporter.
The problem with doing it that way is that even if it does pass in the House, I don't see it passing in the Senate. Even on the Dem side, right? Because Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema.
And so my stance in all this, and this idea of all the different fronts we possibly can be fighting for. Of course, we want to keep pressure on all of our lawmakers at all levels. And I believe if you have a state where it's even feasible at all to make a push for healthcare in your state, that is another way of keeping pressure on our lawmakers at the federal level at the same time. Right? It actually just magnifies your political voice. More than you can just contacting your federal lawmakers alone. And should we succeed in a state, I don't think there is a bigger and louder strike you could make at Medicare for all than getting a state to pass this. I mean, we've seen what that has done with many other social issues in the past. And it is the way it happened in Canada, before.
Right.
So it's stand, lift where you stand. That's what I say. You have a voice, use it where you have it, how you can use it. That might mean in your county, that might mean in your state, that might mean marching in the streets of Washington, D.C., and it might mean crocheting a hat.
Right. Some people are even trying to pursue this by county, which actually might be one of the easier ways, to be honest with you. But I believe it was Wisconsin. There was a county or something in Wisconsin that was trying to pass single payer healthcare by the county. We look at a place like Libby, Montana, which actually was able to get single payer healthcare because they had, an environmental issue in Libby, Montana. I think it was asbestos. So they actually have already had this. Unfortunately, I know people have reached out to them to try to do interviews. It seems like they don't want the attention. I've noticed that. But that's a great case to point to for those of you trying to do this on the state level is, well, what about Libby, Montana? And a lot of people don't know about it. I brought on one of our state representatives on this show, and I told him about it. He didn't know about it. So I think, that needs to be talked about more. I think more people need to hear that there is a place in the US that already has this. But I think the big fight is the pharmaceutical companies. It's big pharma. We have to break away from that. And you would have thought like a pandemic would have been the big red flag. Like it's time to break away from this.
Big pharma and big insurance.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think that like for people who are not aware, I know they've been on here a couple of times, but like the Red Berets and like whole Washington, like the beret that you see on Kenny's head, like that's what they do. They knit those berets. I have one too. They sent me one as well. But these are people that they're activists. Some of them were nurses or teachers, and they decided, let's try to fight for this in Washington state. I think the first time I heard about it, I saw Laura again, same thing. She was on someone's show. I can't remember who, but I saw her on someone's show and I was like, holy crap, more people need to know that this is happening. So I think that the message is starting to spread. It's starting to get out there more and more. And the fact that Dr. Jarvis is actually looking at a state like Utah, that's great. Because that's a red state typically.
Yes, it is. It's very red. And Dr. Jarvis actually has a purple beret that he wears because his whole thing is the fusion between the red and the blue. So he wears a purple beret. But what I love about the idea of the red beret is that it's a visual image of solidarity. And that's what's really missing from this whole conversation is that we're all way more united on this than most people understand. Some of the numbers you see in the movie is that pre-pandemic, we had 70% of the United States all agreeing that the government should be controlling healthcare. 70%. Yeah. And that included 59% of Republicans, according to Fox News of all outlets. Okay. So we can assume those numbers are probably even more optimistic now than they were then. So what I hope to do with the film and what I think the Red Berets are trying to do with their hats is show that partisanship is a big distraction and an illusion. We're actually all on the same team because we all have heartbeats and we all get sick and we're all aging and we all have people we love. And that's what truly matters.
That's right. And we all need health care. It's something that everyone needs, whether you're Republican or Democrat or you're non-affiliated. We all need health care. Well, Kenny, thank you so much for coming on. Again, where can people find you? And just one more time for people that just joined, when will the movie be released?
Yep. Movie is premiering in Tacoma on May 19th, and you can look for it to be available online and all over the country in small venues shortly after that. And the best place to stay up to date is healingus.network.com, which is a website where we're trying to fill up with all kinds of resources for people who want to get involved in the movement, but also follow the movie and find out where they can see it and get copies of it for themselves.
Awesome, Kenny. Thank you so much. Well, keep me updated, especially, when you guys are deciding to move nationally. with
Sure.
the documentary. Keep me updated, and I can let you know about Somerville Theater, etc.
Yeah, I'm going to follow up with you with that right away for sure. Cool.
Awesome.
Thanks again for having me. Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, guys, Healing Us. So don't forget about that documentary. That'll be released next week. I'm super excited about that. He has been working on that for a long time, and I've been waiting for that film to come out. So super pumped. Again, that's healingus.network.com. You can go there and check that out. Okay, guys, we have a good show tonight. At least I think so. At least I think so. I want to give a shout out to Sabby patrons, show you that thumbnail, and then we'll dive right in. So let's go ahead and shout out everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. I really do appreciate it here. And every time I look at the new design, it makes me very happy because I have 2 pages now instead of like 5 pages to scroll through. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: Ultimate, Sabinators, Sabsters, Sabbies in the house, which is like the biggest group, I believe, and also members. You can see all of their names listed here, and you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the ticker there. Thank you guys so much for your support. Really do appreciate that. All righty. What are we talking about tonight, ladies and gentlemen? This should be an interesting show. Oh, man, you're going to get some laughs out of this one, I think. At least I think so. Okay, tonight we are discussing Donald Trump town hall on CNN. Why does Trump have that smug look on his face? And what was that all about last night? We're going to get into that one. Sorry about that. We're going to get into that. That is going to be hilarious. Some laughing moments for you, I think. Don't forget to go ahead and answer that poll that's pinned to the live chat. And we'll show that at the end of the show. We're also going to discuss Tucker Carlson gets the last word. And what does this have to do with Elon Musk? Huge update announcement about Tucker Carlson and a little bit more news about that today that came out as well. So hold on to your seats for that one. We're also going to discuss Biden loses young voters. Gee, I wonder how did that happen? Being sarcastic there for a second. And last but not least, George Santos is arrested, or whoever he is today. We don't know who the real George is supposed to be, but we'll get into that story as well. Go to a couple of comments here. Joe says, in the United States, medical debt could lead to bankruptcy and the loss of all your possessions in order to get Medicare. It is also responsible for homelessness. Yes. Thank you so much for saying that, Joe. Danny, well said. Working with someone you disagree with, setting a great example. And shout out to Red Berets, Medicare for All. Thank you, Sabby, for this interview coverage. We are so appreciative. Thank you. Of course, anytime. So, Donald Trump. He had a town hall last night on CNN. And yes, there have been plenty of criticism of CNN for even hosting a town hall with Donald Trump. Some people who are liberals kind of just lost their minds when they found out that this was going to happen. But you have to remember that CNN does have a new manager. And one of the things that he decided to change about CNN is not make it particularly partisan. So he's trying to have Republican politicians come on as well as Republican candidates. I think he's trying to make it a little bit more even, so to speak. So you can only imagine what people are saying about the town hall, especially considering the fact that it wasn't just a Republican, but Donald Trump. I want to start off with some of the most interesting moments from the town hall last night, which I think are important. And I'm going to tell you what I think happened with this town hall. If I were Joe Biden, I would be very ready. And I don't think that Joe Biden is. Let's go ahead and jump right in here.
If I'm president, I will have that war settled in one day, 24 hours.
How would you settle that war in one day?
Because I'll meet with Putin.
This was probably the most important response last night.
If I'm president, I will have that war settled in one day, 24 hours.
How would you settle that war in one day?
Because I'll meet with Putin, I'll meet with Zelensky. They both have weaknesses and they both have strengths. And within 24 hours, that war will be settled. It'll be over. It'll be absolutely over.
Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I don't think in terms of winning and losing. I think in terms of getting it settled so we stop killing all these people and breaking down this country. Now,
let's talk about this part right here. This is probably one of the most important questions of the night, the war between Russia and Ukraine. I look back on this and I feel like Caitlyn did not ask this question in the right way. She asked, do you want Ukraine to win this war? Let me tell you why I think that was a problem. Because as we've talked about before on this show, the goal is not necessarily to win. The goal is to support the military-industrial complex, create these never-ending wars, and regime change. That's typically the goal. So how could she have phrased this differently? Maybe she could have asked him, what is your end game for this war between Russia and Ukraine? But don't ask the question, do you want Ukraine to win this war? Like that, to me, that didn't make, and I want to be very clear why I said that question is problematic. You got to think about the base, okay? Even though this town hall is on CNN, you have many Trump supporters watching the town hall. What do most Republicans want? Do they want the war to end with some type of negotiation? Or do they want Ukraine to win the war? I think if you would ask most people, they want some type of peace negotiation and they want this to be settled. So when Caitlyn is asking her questions, it's not just this one. There's another one I'm going to point to. When Caitlyn is asking her questions, she's asking them with the type of framing that liberals want to hear, because that's what she's used to doing because she's on CNN. You just heard the audience clapping, and there were more claps that come along throughout the night. The way he answered this question, especially at the very beginning where he said this war would be done on day one. Now, do we necessarily think that's true? I don't think so. But he's saying what people want to hear. He's saying what his base wants to hear. That is important. Not just Republicans, though, by the way. Some independents, even lefties like myself. I just want it to end. I'm tired of the wars. So that was a good response. And then when she asked him, do you want Ukraine to win this war? He said, I want the killing to stop. Now, why is that an important response? Because he is acknowledging that people are dying on both sides, not just on Russia's side, but also on Ukraine's side. And then it alerts the public that, yes, we need to talk about the tragedy of war, the people who are being killed. This is the question. Mark my words. If this question comes up again, and we're still in this conflict with Russia and Ukraine, and we're going into the debates, if his competitors do not know how to answer that question, Trump gets the nomination in a landslide. If this war is still continuing and it's the debate between Trump and Joe Biden, I think that Donald Trump wins. I hope that everybody is listening to this and everyone is paying attention to how he answered that question. That is very important. Let's go on.
Will you pardon the January 6 rioters who were convicted of federal offenses?
I am inclined to pardon many of them. I can't say for every single one because a couple of them probably they got out of control. But, you know, when you look at Antifa, what they've done to Portland, and if you look at Antifa, look at what they've done to Minneapolis and so many other places. Look at what they did to Seattle and BLM. Many people were killed. These people, I'm not trying to justify anything, but you have two standards of justice in this country. And what they've done, and I love that question, because what they've done to so many people is nothing Nothing. And then what they've done to these people, they've persecuted these people. And yeah, my answer is I am most likely, if I get in, I will most likely, I would say it will be a large portion of them. You know, they did a very...
Listen to the applauses. See what I'm saying? And CNN might not have been prepared for this, but there are a lot of people applauding for Donald Trump. So what he's trying to do is he's trying to make the comparison between the protesters that came out in January and BLM and Antifa. And he's trying to make that comparison in reference to like the rioting, right? Like breaking into retail shops and some of the violence that came along with all three of those situations. I don't know if that's necessarily the best comparison, and I'll tell you why. Number one, when we talk about BLM is not as liked now as it was during that time. People see that BLM has basically become a cash cow. Anytime the organization is able to have a $5 million house, people see that it fell right into capital, and it's all about making money. So BLM doesn't hold as much weight with the activist community, particularly those who are activists for police brutality. It doesn't hold as much weight back then. It doesn't hold as much weight right now as it did back then. So I don't know if Trump realizes that, but I'm just letting you know, as someone who is an activist, it's not as powerful as it was before. We don't see it in the same light as we did before. Antifa, like, I don't know. I guess I'm one of those people. I just don't take Antifa as seriously as some people do. I just like, whatever, you know, but I think people need to pay attention to that as well. But I don't know about the BLM thing. Like I said, people don't like them as much now as they did back then.
And it'll be very early on. And they're living in hell right now.
You defended the comments that you made on that Access Hollywood tape about being able to grab women how you want. Do you stand by those comments?
I said if you're famous and rich or whatever I said, but I said if you're a star, you are, and I said, women let you. I didn't say you grab. I said women let. You know, you didn't use that word, but if you look, women let you. Now, they said, will you take that back? I said, look, for a million years, this is the way it's been. I want to be honest. This is the way it's been. I can take it back if you'd like to, but if you're a famous person, if you're a star, and I'm not referring to myself, I'm saying people that are famous, people that are
you
stars,
were asked in the deposition,
people that are rich,
to be a star,
people that are powerful. Yes. They tend to do pretty well in a lot of different ways, okay? And you would like me to take that back? I can't take it back because it happens to be true. Just so you understand, I had every right to do it.
So let me just chime in there for a second. I have to go back and check the way that he actually said that. But I guess what he's trying to say with that statement is that for people who are celebrities and people who are famous, they can get women to pretty much do what they want them to do. And I guess you can point to people like professional athletes that have groupies waiting for them when they show up to different cities to play a game, that kind of thing. But I'd have to go back and check and see if he actually did word it that way. I don't remember, but the point that I'm trying to make here is that Trump found a way during this town hall to turn the negatives in his direction and try to make it a positive. And this is something that someone who knows how to read a room can do really well. I think that Donald Trump knows how to read the room. It's like he can feel the energy of the room when he goes into the room. So even though she was kind of coming at him with obviously tough questions, negative questions as well, he found a way to turn it around and make it seem like it was not so negative after all. And everybody should pay attention to that. And anyone who plans on debating Donald Trump should pay attention to that as well. That's not something that's necessarily easy to do. Let's go on. So we're going on to talk about the documents.
Just so you understand, I had every right to do it. I didn't make a secret of it. You know, the boxes were stationed outside of the White House. People were taking pictures of the GSA of the various people.
I got to stop you right there, though, because the Presidential Records Act, which is not well known to a lot of people, I read it. It does not say that you can take documents with you. It says actually that they are the property of the federal government.
You negotiate, you make a deal. It's not criminal, by the way. The Presidential Records Act is not criminal.
That part, I don't know if it was the best question to ask him either, and let me tell you why. Because you can also flip that around and apply that to Joe Biden about taking these classified documents. Because now Joe Biden has been called out for doing the same thing. So that's another thing where Trump, again, he can take that negative and flip it around and say, are you serious? Like Joe Biden, which I think he did say later on. I didn't get all of it on there. But are you serious? The president of the United States has done this right now. So I think that's the thing. I'm going to show you something else too, because I don't feel like she was fully prepared for this. I think she thought that because of CNN, the audience was going to be in her favor, most likely on her side. Not so much the case last night. I have another clip. This one was the doozy. Let's we got to get into this one. Now, shout out to Tim. So Tim Young shared this on Twitter. I don't know who Tim is, but this one really will have you floored. Trump just pulls out receipts to disprove Caitlin Collins' claims on the CNN town hall, and the crowd cheers. This is not going the way that CNN wanted it to. You have got to see this clip here.
Back to what happened on that day.
You said you weren't. Say that.
He has testified that, Mr. President.
He did not say that.
But you said you weren't very involved that day. You did tell your supporters to come to Washington. You tweeted about it, about that speech that happened on the rally.
Am I allowed to say that?
When they went to the Capitol and they were breaking into the Capitol, smashing windows, injuring police officers, why did it take you 3 hours to tell them to go home?
I don't believe it did. Oh, let me pull it out. I have to pull it out.
See, again, guys, pay close attention. Notice the crowd. They're cheering for him. They're cheering for him. This is not going the way I think that she thought that this town hall was going to go. He showed up with physical receipts. Now, I know you guys always say, well, Sabby always has receipts. Not in my pocket. This guy showed up with physical receipts ready and prepared. This is why I said if Joe Biden were to debate Donald Trump tonight, right now, he would not be ready for this. Not prepared. What's that, Jay? Trump literally pulled out the receipts. Yeah, I know. I was watching this and I was like, seriously? Ready to fight. And the crowd is cheering for him. They're not booing. So let's go back. We'll let them finish this.
Oh, let me pull it out. I have to pull it out. So if you look at on January 5th, the day before, I said, please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful. Stay peaceful. This was the day before, and this was in the form of Twitter. Now I use Truth Social. I think it's far superior, okay? I hope everybody's on Truth. If you look January 6th, just at before 2:30, I am asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful. This is right after, as it was happening. But what happened is they took it down. I don't know why. I think they took it down because it was so good. They didn't like it being up there. I am asking, and we didn't know until I got it back, because now I have 90 million people waiting for me to go back, but I'm on Truth and I'm staying on Truth. Listen, I am asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful. No violation. We want no violation. We want no violence. Remember, we are the party of law and order. Respect the law and our great men and women in blue. Thank you. That was at 2:30. That was very early.
Mr. President, I looked at the same timeline that you did.
No, but you didn't report that. You know why? Because it was taken down.
We did report it. I was reporting that
thing. It was taken down and it wasn't.
But when it was clear.
Aye. Aye. If you have not had a chance to do so, go ahead and hit that like button, guys. That helps me out with the algorithm there. But it did not go well for Caitlyn. Did not. I don't think she was prepared for that. I wouldn't expect someone to have physical receipts. That was also interesting, too. There was actually a town hall focus group, and they were questioning about Donald Trump.
When they went to the...
Whoops, sorry. They were questioned about Donald Trump. I want you to hear their response because, again, I don't think this worked out the way that CNN thought it would. They tried to do a gotcha question here. Listen to this.
Does it bother you that he keeps talking about 2020 and not 2024? I'll ask you first. This is Jonathan Leslie. He's 40, Republican, voted for Trump twice. How do you feel about those lies?
So I feel like part of it's also the media narrative, as you guys asked him the first question at the town hall about the 2020 election, rather than current stuff.
So don't you think he could say it's time for me to start talking about 2024 and not lies that aren't true?
Couldn't the media ask him a question about 2024?
Well, there were questions, but you're right. That was the first thing, but that's something that was on our mind. And that's why I was asked first. Mike McGlaughlin, does it bother you that he keeps talking about 2020 and not 2024? I'll ask you first. This is Jonathan Leslie. He's 40, Republican, voted for Trump twice. How do you feel about those lies?
So I feel like part of it's also the media narrative, as you guys asked him the first question at the town hall about the 2020 election.
The media narrative. They really tried with that. Did not work well. Did not work well. Now, Chris Cuomo, former CNN commentator, he had something to say about this as well. For those of you who are not aware, he is on News Nation. This is on YouTube. And I don't think he's going to like the responses here from his guests talking about how she believes that Trump won over the people during that town hall. Listen to this.
He's going to come back in just like he came into the belly of the beast tonight, got a hostile media. He was calm, cool, collected. He masterfully answered every single question in a hostile environment. And guess what? He won over the people in that room.
We'll see how people in the room felt. I didn't get to watch it. Obviously, I've been on TV, but from what I'm reading, it seemed like you got a pretty fair shake in terms of what the questions were. But we'll see how that shakes out. You're right.
This piece right here, where he said it seems like he got a fair shake in reference to how the questions were. If he was still on CNN, I wonder if he would be able to say some of the things that he's saying now on News Nation. Probably not. Probably not. Let's go on.
Right about Title 42 going down and nothing being there to replace it that will stop the flow. It's going to be a bloodbath politically, and I think there's going to be a lot of blame to go around, but it's going to be bad for Democrats. The dollar is not close to losing its reserve status, and even if it were, no president can make that any different because it is a world market. And different sovereigns make the decision. You can shake your head any way you want, Liz. That's the way the monetary policy in the world market works.
And we're not.
I know we have leverage, but you don't control what the reserve currency is as the U.S. president, and the U.S. dollar is doing just fine as the reserve currency.
No,
but I hear you about the border.
Ask all the BRICS nations. Look at how they're abandoning the dollar as we speak.
Please.
And it's the Biden regime that's pushing them away.
Look at China and look at the UAE and look how they are buying it. But anyway, that's for another day. I appreciate your take on it. Thank you, Liz Harrington, for making your case for the campaign. Appreciate you taking the opportunity.
Hey. Bye. Susie says, hey, bye. Do you think that Donald Trump won over the people last night during that town hall? Now, I did watch it, and I will say he didn't seem to sweat. Again, I think he knows how to read a room. And I think that Biden, who's already struggling with press conferences, how is Joe Biden going to debate this guy? I don't expect Joe Biden to be as sharp as he was in 2020 during the debate. I really don't expect that to happen. But you show up with physical receipts. Someone mentioned it earlier. He outdid me. He actually did outdo me, okay? Because I don't walk around with physical receipts. Now, Ben Shapiro said something, and I usually do not agree with Ben Shapiro on almost anything. But I agree with him on this statement here. CNN did a massive favor last night, and everyone knows it. Here's why. The town hall was billed as a Republican primary town hall, which means that presumably Trump should have been asked about issues Republican voters care about, like, say, Fauci, the pandemic, criminal justice reform, and Alice Johnson and crime, the border wall, and illegal immigrants, etc. Now, let me present a partial list of the issues Republican voters don't care about. E. Jean Carroll, this is the woman that has accused Donald Trump of sexual assault. January 6th, Georgia election questions, National Archive documents, Alvin Bragg's allegations. These are all Democrat top issues. Collins asked 0 of the questions Republicans cared about and all the ones Democrats cared about. So in other words, this was billed as a GOP primary night, and it was just Caitlin Collins asking questions Democrats have about Trump. Republican voters sensed this. So when Trump took out the kitchen sink and began hammering Collins into the wall with it, they cheered. Republicans will always and correctly cheer biased moderators being steamrolled by Republican candidates, no matter what those candidates actually say. Trump wins more favor with Republican voters. Democrats remain off put. Independents continue to wonder why we're relitigating 2020. Ridiculous failure by CNN on all fronts, unless, of course, their goal is to renominate Trump for the ratings and because they think he's most beatable. Note, this, by the way, is precisely their goal. And if you were to go back to the town hall last night, he actually has a point here about the questions that Caitlin chose to ask him. She's looking at this, as a commentator on CNN. These are the issues they talk about on CNN all the time. They talk about those issues about Georgia and Alvin Bragg and Jean Carroll and January 6th. They talk about January 6th all the time. I'm so sick of it. I'm so hearing about January 6th. Problem is, Republican audiences and most Republican voters don't really care about those issues. So by asking those questions that Democrats tend to care about, and I'd also question how many Democrats actually care, but the narrative that they usually run on CNN, that actually, in my opinion, that actually helped Trump. So many people were upset. AOC was very upset and said that CNN did such a bad job and they shouldn't have done this and blah, blah, blah. Apparently, she's the spokesperson for who should or should not be platformed or should be censored, what media people should talk about now. It's really interesting. It's also very scary and concerning to see someone who's a politician make these statements and say who should be speaking what and to whom. But in my opinion, I feel like CNN, they dug their own hole here. They dug themselves into a hole and they couldn't get out of it. I don't feel like Caitlin was prepped with the right questions. I don't know if she picked her questions herself or the questions were given to her, but I don't feel like that was the road to go down. I do think he struggled a little bit with the abortion question. And I feel like that's something he doesn't really want to touch, but you're going to have to touch it in the general election. You're going to have to touch it at some point. This is going to come back up again. And I think he doesn't really want to touch it because some of the Republican voters are not against abortion anymore. If you look at the polls, it shows you. But case in point, some liberals are upset because they feel like the town hall actually helped Donald Trump. I don't feel like where the town hall took place really made a difference for Trump. If it was on Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, I don't think that matters. I think he still knows how to answer these questions in a crowd-pleasing way. And that goes back to knowing how to read the room. Joe Biden, who I believe the DNC will still put forth, is going to have a really tough time. Really tough time. And I don't care for Donald Trump. But just because I don't care for someone doesn't mean they don't know how to answer questions. Top question of the night was the Ukraine-Russia war. The war in Ukraine, top question of the night. Wants to end the war within 24 hours. Again, he's saying what people want to hear. Do I think that'll actually happen? No, I don't. But he gave the right responses. Wants to end the war in 24 hours. And then when she said, do you want Ukraine to win this war? His response was, I want the killing to stop. That's why I said she should not have asked that question in that way. But here we are. Let's go to some of the comments here. Make sure you answer the poll. What do you think? Don't just go by what I say. How do you think that town hall made Donald Trump look? And we'll talk about that tonight on Call-In as well. Public Domain says Antifa is a state of mind, you fucks. Yeah, like the Antifa thing for me, I was just always like, Rick, CNN got owned all night. Notori, CNN is so sad and pathetic. Bad Cookies, look at all of this free publicity. The MSM is going to make Trump a monster all over again. Chastity says, my mom is MSNBC Blue no matter who, and she was impressed, and it changed her mind about some of his ideas. You guys see this? Thank you for the super chat, M. Smith. I don't think Donald Trump had to win them over. That's a good point as well. Terry says Biden will lose on any debate. Oh boy. I'll take that comment on Rockfin. Thanks. Thank you so much for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. What he said and what he meant to say can be two different things. Women let you get away with a lot when you are rich and famous. The problem is when two women welcome it, you as a man make an assumption that all women have this mentality. 99% will let you and are okay with it. Welcome it, but it's that 100th woman that is like, whoa, what is this? I didn't ask for this. 99% okay. 100th will kill you, men. Be mindful. Think Tyson. Mike Tyson? Okay. I think you're talking about Mike Tyson. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for that, Roger. And Eric did let me know in the private chat, Trump quote, and when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything. Grab them by the boop. You can do anything. So Eric was able to find that actual quote. Interesting times we're living in, ladies and gentlemen. We're moving on to our next story. And I don't know if you heard about what has happened to George Santos. Now, George Santos, interesting character here. He ran for office as a Republican and he won. And then it just turned out that some of the things that George Santos said about his background actually were incorrect. Like he said he was part Jewish. Apparently, he lied about his education, that apparently, like he said, he went to this college that it turns out he didn't go to. So people were calling for him to resign because he was not honest about his resume, basically. Well, he has now been arrested. Let's go ahead and get into this story. I can't make this up. This has been a crazy week in reference to news, but they came to arrest George. Here we go.
NBC News correspondent Rahima Ellis is standing by outside the courthouse. Also joining us, Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Vitale, Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delanian, and former federal prosecutor Cynthia Oxney. Rahima, Santos in custody now. What's next?
Well, there's several things ahead for him, but we can tell you that freshman Congressman George Santos, he did turn himself here into the federal courthouse here in Islip, New York. We believe he went in through an underground garage because we were not allowed in that area to see him, but court officials did let us know that he is now in custody. And as you point out, he is facing these charges. The indictment was returned yesterday by a federal grand jury here in Islip. It's a 13-count indictment, including charges of fraud, money laundering, theft of public funds, and false statements.
Pause here. 13 counts. This is not good. 7 counts of wire fraud, 3 counts of money laundering, 1 count of theft of public funds, 2 counts of making materially false statements to House representatives. I told you guys, like, when this story came out about George Santos, I was like, I don't know who George is supposed to be. I don't even know. What if his real name isn't even George Santos? I'm sorry. He's just, we don't know who this guy is supposed to be.
Today's hearing is at 1 p.m. this afternoon as he's expected to plead not guilty. Some local representatives here are hoping that he will just resign. Anna?
And Ken, this is a lengthy indictment, so let's dig deeper into these 13 counts. Walk us through what exactly we know about these charges and the investigation.
So as the U.S. attorney put it, Santos is accused of using political contributions to line his pockets. He's also accused of unlawfully applying for unemployment benefits that should have gone to New Yorkers who lost their jobs due to the pandemic. And
this guy is a con man. That's what George Santos is. You took political contributions and you put it in your pocket. That's a huge no-no. Huge one. Imagine if all the money that you guys donated to people like Bernie Sanders, imagine if they took that money and put it in their bank account. And what the hell was he thinking? Did he honestly think that he was not going to be caught? This is traceable. When people donate money to you, the money is traceable. What the hell was he thinking? 2, for him to file for unemployment, get unemployment benefits when he was not supposed to. So he took benefits away from people in need who actually did need unemployment benefits, who needed that money in New York. That is a big no. If I was George, when this is all said and done, he may not want to move back to New York. You have made some people pretty angry. Again, these are things that are traced, like unemployment. There's records kept about that. You think they weren't going to come back and find out? Boy, I tell you.
He's accused of lying to the House of Representatives. So this indictment includes 7 counts of wire fraud, 3 counts of money laundering, and 1 count of theft of public funds. And specifically, Santos is charged with defrauding campaign funders by using political contributions to fund his lavish lifestyle. As part of that, he's accused of telling certain contributors that they could give large sums of money that went beyond campaign donation limits. He's also charged with defrauding the COVID unemployment program in New York, receiving nearly $25,000 in benefits he wasn't entitled to. And he's charged with
$20,000 of benefits he took away from people who actually needed that money. That is disgusting.
Making false statements on the financial disclosure reports listing his sources of income that he's required to file as a member of Congress. He's actually accused of listing $750,000 in income he did not receive. I've never seen that before, and I think that suggests we have not seen the last of charges, because he also loaned his campaign a lot of money. That is not mentioned in this indictment.
Interesting. Cynthia, let's just again emphasize what charges he is facing. 7 counts of wire fraud, 3 counts of money laundering, 1 count of theft of public funds, and 2 counts of making false statements to the House of Representatives. Put that into perspective. Just how serious are these charges?
Well, they're very serious. It's a really interesting indictment. It's like a kitchen sink indictment because a lot of these things aren't even related. I mean, the lying to the House of Representatives is totally unrelated to the campaign finance and the stealing of the COVID money. But I think Ken makes a very important point that everybody should focus on, and that is when they charge him with overstating the $750,000 in income, what we're talking about there is in the future, he's going to have to justify where he came up with the loan of $750,000 to his campaign. So I would expect a superseding indictment at some point in the future. But recognize going back for a second to the indictment itself, the wire fraud charges which are spelled out. Wire fraud basically means you were defrauding people and you were sending money through the banks.
Which is also traceable. Like, it's just, he really thought that this was not going to come back to bite him in the ass. Like, seriously, what was he thinking? What was he thinking? And who gave him a loan for $700,000? Who gave him money? Who? Oh my God, con man.
You made a wire transfer from here, $25,000 from here to here, and it was fraudulent. Those are not hard to prove. He's got a big problem here. This is somebody who needs to get serious about a plea agreement very quickly, or he's going to spend a lot of time in jail.
Any money that goes through the bank, this is why a lot of times if people are trying to do something similar to what he did, they would do this by cash, right? Like hand off the cash and stuff like that. He did it through a bank. The bank, come on. If it goes through the bank, you can track it. If it goes through the bank, it is traceable. Has he not seen like any other? Did he not watch Breaking Bad? I'm sorry. Come on, man. Jeez.
Allie, some Republicans were already calling for Santos to resign before we got these indictments. So what's the word there on Capitol Hill? Do you think the scope of these charges are now going to push any of the Republicans who are on the fence, like Kevin McCarthy, the House Speaker, to make a firm decision here?
Look, so far, no, Anna. And in part, that might be because when the speaker came back from the White House meeting on the debt ceiling yesterday, he used that as an excuse for why he wasn't ready to talk about Santos's future here. But we did ask him directly in a gaggle of reporters if he thought Santos should resign. Nevertheless, this continues the idea that the New York delegation of Republicans, people like Mike Lawler, for example, are at odds with the speaker on this, because watch the differences in their reaction from yesterday. Look at this.
There's a clock ticking, and George Santos should have resigned in December. He should have resigned in January. He should have resigned yesterday, and maybe he'll resign today.
He should resign. I've said that repeatedly, and obviously these charges confirm what I've said from the beginning.
With George Santos, I did not put him on any committees. In America, we'll just follow the same pattern we always have, right? If a person is indicted, they're not on committees. They have the right to vote, but they have to go to trial.
Notice what he said there, following the same pattern that we always do. I would say that could be part of the problem, following that same pattern.
And so we'll see if Speaker McCarthy's answer changes today in light of the fact that Santos is actually in custody, and we'll see him later in court this afternoon. But it is a real reminder that McCarthy's number game here in Congress has everything to do with what he's saying, or rather not saying, about the future of Congressman George Santos. We watched, for example, just 2 weeks ago, how McCarthy was able to get that debt ceiling bill through his conference by one vote. It's a reminder that New York is the majority maker for McCarthy, and he needs every person with an R next to their name to be here in this building. So Santos still has leverage in that way, even though he's clearly in legal trouble right now.
Right. They might see him as disposable because he doesn't really have much to offer. Like, I hate to say it, but if he's going through all of these financial troubles, these issues, he hasn't been there long enough to have any type of power and know people in powerful positions, so to speak. They may just kind of see him as disposable and say, we'll just put somebody else in that seat. He's not really worth the trouble. We'll see.
McCarthy needed every vote just to become speaker, right? It went through 15 different rounds. Are you saying he needs Santos?
Yes, and frankly, Santos has reminded McCarthy of this at a few various moments. For example, just over the last few weeks, there was a day where Santos seemed to say that maybe he wouldn't vote for the debt ceiling bill. Then, of course, he came back around and said he would. But it's a reminder yet again that Santos does hold power in this conference when, and we've been saying this from the day that we started those first of the 15 rounds of ballots for McCarthy to become speaker, in a conference like this one where the majority is so razor thin, it gives every Republican House member the ability to sort of be like a Senator Joe Manchin. They all get to be kingmakers, and they all get to have their day where every vote matters. So Santos.
Yeah, but they could put someone else, and I say this because they can handpick someone to take that seat. They can handpick someone else to go into that seat that doesn't have all this baggage, and is still going to go along with Kevin McCarthy. They can find that person. I don't think it's difficult to do. Remember, not all of New York City or the boroughs are blue, Staten Island is actually red. So just keep that in mind. Geez Louise, I can't, man. This guy is something else. Dylan says George Santos would have been perfect for Better Call Saul. Oh man, I can see that. Jesus, Red, I ain't gonna lie. I'm actually kind of impressed when people get away with stuff like this. This is something, let me tell you. Let's go ahead and finish up here.
His vote, regardless of the legal troubles, still really matter here. And it might be an explanation why we see McCarthy still dragging his feet, saying that this is for the voters and the courts to decide, and not he himself wading into the fray and saying what several in the New York delegation have been saying for a while, which is that Santos should resign.
A reminder, Santos has already said he will run for re-election. Yep. And Ken, I just want to walk through.
He said he's going to run as for re-election. As who? As who are you going to run as this time? Are you going to use your real resume this time?
What reporters have uncovered about Santos, some of these things he's admitted to, lying about where he went to school, lying about where he worked, lying about being Jewish, lying about his athletic accomplishments, lying about raising money for a homeless veteran's dog, lying to donors, lying to investors, lying about his campaign finances. That list is not even all inclusive. Here's
the thing I want to show you. It's like he didn't even try to lie the right way. Like, if you're going to lie, don't make it so freaking obvious. Education, Horace Mann School, Baruch College, NYU. Like, you know, go a little bit lower. Like, if you're going to lie and say that you went to college, maybe not pick a school like NYU, okay? Maybe say you went to SUNY, right? Something like that. Pick like a state school. What was he thinking? No, he went high. Yes, I graduated from New York University. It's a top school. He didn't even try to do it the right way. Then when we talk about employment, let's go over to this part. This is funny. Right here. Oh, that's Faith. Hold on. We'll go to employment.
Where he worked, lying about being Jewish.
Employment. It's like he didn't even try to, you know, if you're going to lie about where you work, you don't pick a company like Goldman Sachs. You could have picked any other company. He said Citi and Goldman Sachs. You could have picked like some public, I don't know. Pick like a local bank, man. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, he went way too high here. Then when we talk about faith, then he said that he was Jewish. This dude was, Jesus Christ. Charities, Friends of Pets United, General Employed Pulse shooting victims. What the? He really went for the lies of all lies. He didn't even try to do it, you know, damn.
Raising money for a homeless veteran's dog, lying to donors, lying to investors, lying about his campaign finances. That list is not even all inclusive. Do you think there's more we don't know?
I absolutely do, Anna. And as Cynthia was alluding to, it would not surprise anyone who's familiar with how federal prosecutions work to see a superseding indictment in this case, because there are things that we know, for example, the FBI was asking about, such as that alleged scheme to defraud that homeless veteran over that money for his dog, that are not in this indictment, nor is there any explanation for the source of the funds of that $750,000 he said he earned, some of which was loaned to his campaign. So those are unanswered questions that appear to be very questionable, and it would not surprise anybody to see future charges along those lines.
Now, we need to get to the overall view here. Why would he think that he could get away with that to begin with? Because he knew that most likely people probably weren't going to check it, or by the time they did check it, it would be too late, which that was his case. He was already about to be sworn in. But then also that pride, like, you know, like you can just tell that many lies. You know, maybe he is a pathological liar. People like that do exist, but he knew he was not going to be held accountable. That is why, guys, that's important to understand. He knew, especially if he got in, which he did get in, he did win that seat, less likely to be held accountable. I'll take that comment on Rockfin, Eric. Jeez Louise. Thank you for the comment on Rockfin, Roger. Party abolition would free GOP politicians from the Old Testament Christian base. Yes, I call them that. Not conservative Christians, not Jesus Christ, New Testament Christians. Interesting. Interesting. Shout out to Kit from Heartlands Media. George Santos is the avatar of Congress. He is the true representation of the scum and villainy in Congress. This is the truth. Lawrence says Santos lies his ass off and probably will skate. Assange tells the truth and spends his life in endless imprisonment. Exactly. JB says pathological liar in Congress. He's right at home. Lawrence says lying just like Biden. That's right. That's right. We're going to get into our next story here. I don't know if you've heard about this, but we've been talking about Joe Biden's approval rating. Obviously, it has decreased. I'm sure that's no surprise to most of you watching and have been tuning into this show in particular. But now there's more information because it appears now Joe Biden is actually losing support among young voters as well. That's not surprising to me, considering that the student debt cancellation did not go through. And that is about to go back into repayment at some form or time. So that's not surprising. What is concerning, though, is the fact that you have people who are upset, but they're still going to vote for him because Bernie Sanders endorsed him. I can't make this up. Shout out to Case Study QV for this clip. Biden's approval drops among young progressive. She's going to vote for Joe Biden again because Bernie Sanders endorsed him. Guys, this is one of those times when I have to say, make it make sense.
President Biden's latest approval ratings are weak as he launches his re-election campaign. And that's especially true of one key constituency, young progressive voters aged 18 to 29. Eva's been doing a lot of reporting on this. So, Eva, why are young progressives souring on the president?
So me and my colleague, Gregory Krieg, we spoke to young activists across the country, and essentially they feel as though they aren't being listened to, or they are being engaged at the White House, but they describe these interactions as perfunctory. One of the key issues was this Alaska drilling project that the administration approved. Now, the administration will say that that was already in the pipeline, and no pun intended, and that they had to do it, but also.
No, they didn't have to do it. I just want to go ahead and debunk this lie. She's revealing herself here. When she says it was already in the pipeline and they had to do it, that just tells you that Joe Biden knowingly lied to young people when he said there would be no new drilling. If that was already in the pipeline, that means he already knew, and the Democratic Party knew, and the Biden administration already knew, and they sat there and they let him boldly lie to the American people. Now, to say it was too late, it was never too late. He could still go back and retract it. He could take it back. He's choosing not to. Why is he choosing not to? Again, because he's invested with big money. Big money interests trumps all, regardless of the climate issues. So she just revealed herself, actually, by saying that it was already in the pipeline. So he knowingly lied to young people. Let's go on.
So there have been some other high-profile reversals as well, Allison, on public safety issues as well as immigration. And they are telling us it is not enough for the White House, for President Biden to keep telling, and Democrats at large, to keep telling these young people, consider the alternative. You know, they have to come with a compelling, inspiring message.
Well, is that true?
A compelling and inspiring message. The message and action are two different things. You can tell me what kind of message you want to tell me, but I see your actions. So just like he told people there would be no new drilling, but then he goes on and decides to drill more. And it's not just the Willow Project. There's drilling happening off the coast of Texas as well. We talked about this a couple months ago. So what we got to sit back and we need to ask ourselves is, the message doesn't really mean anything. And what's happening is that young people are starting to realize that those messages don't mean anything either. So this is the same type of logic that Ro Khanna had, the same type of logic Pramila Jayapal had when they say we need to just tell the story better. There's no story for you to tell. We see the behavior. We see the actions. So what they're essentially saying is we need to find a way to convince them, and maybe we need to word things differently. Maybe we just need to lie to get them to come out and vote for Joe Biden again. That's what they're really saying without saying it. So the question that we need to ask, are young people, particularly Gen Z, are they going to fall for this? Again, remember, they came out heavily in the midterms. Let's see if that happens again.
Even because if, let's say, it's a race between President Biden and President Trump, these young progressives, they're not going to vote for President Trump, right? So what would they do? Sit it out? Is that what they're saying?
This is a common misconception here. First of all, when she talks about these young people, we have to remember, particularly people in that age group, the millennials, the Gen Zs, they don't come out in large numbers typically to vote. Boomers do, right? Every now and then there's been a couple of, outliers where they have overly well and come out, but not since Obama 2008. And some people don't remember this, but I remember this very well. Till this day, Obama had the largest turnout of young voters. Now that has trickled down over the years, and I wonder why, right? So for her to say, they're not going to vote for Donald Trump, are they? What are they going to do? Just sit this out? Again, historically, younger people don't come out. They don't come out. They came out before because there were issues that were on the table that actually impacted their lives and affected them. And that's why they came out. But now they see that Joe Biden isn't doing anything, just like Trump didn't do anything in reference to those issues. So why would they come out and support again?
Well, they could sit home. They could stay at home. And, it is, I think that also we're sort of hearing that there is this skepticism about the effectiveness of the electoral process, right? I voted and I'm seeing the erosion of reproductive rights. Now, Republicans, though, are talking about, I think, some of the issues dear to this constituency in a way that is so problematic that it might push them to the other side. So, for instance, when we talk about trans youth, these young people, if you are a young person in this country, you are more likely to know someone who is trans, have someone who is trans in your family. You're not talking about them in the abstract. And so these very vicious attacks that we see on trans folks across the country, that is deeply personal to these voters. And so they could be so outraged by that on the other side that it may prompt them to support President Biden and Democrats, but
I don't think so. Those attacks, not to say that they haven't increased over the years, but that was an issue before Joe Biden ran in 2020. That was an issue before. That didn't seem to prompt young voters to turn out. See, it's really sad that they have to rely on young people being afraid, young people being fearful to get them to come out and to support Crime Bill Joe. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things. It's like, he's experiencing cognitive decline. You know that Joe Biden most likely is not going to make it through a full second term. Let's just be real here. You know that Joe Biden is struggling. You know that his approval rating is low. And it's just like they're crossing their fingers saying, hopefully they'll be fearful enough that they'll come out and support him anyway. This is where we are now. When I see a picture on Twitter of Dianne Feinstein in a wheelchair coming back into Congress, when it is very clear that Dianne Feinstein should not be in Congress. Now, here's another person who's experiencing cognitive decline. They brought this woman back and they literally rolled her back in the wheelchair. Make it make sense. They have to keep the status quo.
Might not be enough.
Harry, are the numbers reflecting that?
I mean, frankly, Joe Biden's approval rating among young voters, they stink. I mean, that's an adjective I'd use to describe it. But ultimately, I think the question that you posed is the key question, which is how do these approval ratings translate into voting patterns?
Let's hold this here for a second. So they're showing Biden approval 18 to 29-year-olds. Okay. Spring 2021, 59%. Fall 2021, 46%. Spring 22, 41%. Fall 22, 39%. And spring 23, 36%. Now they're saying that his approval rating among young people, he said it stinks. But let's also remember when Biden ran for president in 2020, he also did not have that approval rating among young people either. Bernie Sanders actually had the approval of the younger voters. So they did this to themselves. They already had decided that he was going to be the person, that this is who they were going to push through. So this is what you're stuck with. You guys knew that Joe was already experiencing some type of decline, and you pushed this dude through anyway. Crime Bill Joe.
And what we saw in 2022 was that Joe Biden's approval ratings among young voters, they were similarly bad. But what actually happened in the polls? It turns out that Democrats more than held their own among voters under the age of 30. And it's exactly the reason you pointed out, which is that consider the alternative. Now, the big question, again, is do they actually turn out? Because, right, we don't have compulsory voting in this country. You actually have to go out and cast a ballot. And when it comes to the polling, what we generally see is that while enthusiasm is lacking, Democrats at this particular point say they are as likely to cast a ballot or about as likely to cast a ballot as Republicans are. So I certainly agree that young voters may not like Joe Biden, but they hate Donald Trump, and that may be enough.
But do they really? You see, this is the thing. This is what they fell into for 2016, right? It was like, oh, people hate Trump. Hillary's definitely, she's got this. People hate Trump. Didn't work out too well. Didn't quite work out that way. And if it wasn't for the pandemic, I still stand by this. If it was not for the pandemic, Donald Trump will be president right now. Kid you not. Kid you not. You notice that he said Democrats and Republican voters. Didn't say anything about the independents. Nothing, but nobody asked us what we want. Let's just look at the registered Democrats and the registered Republicans. The majority of American voters are independents. They're not even looking at us.
White House knows that they have work to do on this. We spoke to them as well. They pointed out that this Next Gen group did endorse the president. They are huge Gen Z voting mobilization.
Meaning already
effort.
for this next election, they've already endorsed.
They've already endorsed him. So they did note that. And they said that they are speaking to social media influencers. And then they're also.
That's sad. You see what they got to do? You see what they got to do to get people to come out and support an incumbent president? Let's talk to the social media influencers. We got to get young people out there to support Joe Biden. This is just pathetic. Just chalk it up, people. Just chalk it up and just admit he is not the one. If you got to do all of this, all that money that you're spending to reach out to these social media influencers, which make a lot of money, by the way, so they're not going to do this for free. You're going to have to pay them. All this money that people spend campaigning, the marketing that goes with the campaigns, the social media influencers is being added into the mix now. All this money spent towards electoral politics instead of putting that money back into the communities to help the people. You could solve the homeless problem in this country if you stop putting so much money in presidential campaign elections and start putting money back into the community for the people. The money is spent incorrectly. Millions of dollars. Bernie Sanders got over $100 million. All that money down the drain. For what? For a pipe dream and a broken promise.
Also engaging with grassroots gun safety organizations that's an issue that's really important to young people. And so they are attacking this problem. They recognize it is a vulnerability.
And the biggest advantage of all that the president has is that he doesn't have a significant primary challenger. He would really be in trouble if, say, Bernie Sanders, for example, decided that he was going to challenge him. A lot of these young voters, and that's an interesting thing. He is almost as old as the president, but young voters still gravitated to him because of his policies. So that's what.
Did you notice the framing there, that he doesn't have a significant challenger? Totally leaving out the fact that Marianne Williamson and RFK Jr. are running, and leaving out the fact that RFK Jr. is actually polling significantly well, considering he just recently announced he's already over the 15%. But they don't consider him to be significant.
The White House really is thankful for every single day.
Is Bernie Sanders going to launch a campaign?
No, he's endorsed the president. In fact, I was in Michigan last week talking to a voter who said her vote for Joe Biden was specifically to stop Donald Trump. And she's going to vote for Joe Biden again because Bernie Sanders endorsed him. I said, really?
That's the problem right there that I have with Bernie Sanders. Did you hear what he just said? She said she's going to support Joe Biden again because Bernie Sanders endorsed him. This is an example that you can point to when you say that Bernie Sanders is sheepdogging people into the Democratic Party. People ask me for examples. Here's an example. Because he knows that his endorsement actually does matter to some people who supported him still. So if he endorsed Joe Biden over Marianne, over RFK Jr., some of his supporters are going to go along with it because that's what Bernie told them to do. This is important for people to really understand. This is how you take that young energy and you funnel it back into the Democratic Party. You preached about a political revolution. You radicalized people. You got young people energized. And at the end of the day, you funneled them right back into the status quo system that you told them to fight against. This is one of the perfect examples to show you how Bernie Sanders sheepdogs people back into the Democratic Party. That example that he just gave you. And Bernie Sanders knows that. And Bernie Sanders knows that he still has a little bit of power with his voice. So if Bernie Sanders were to say, I'm going to put my support behind the progressive candidates that are challenging Joe Biden, things would be different. And he knows that. And that's why he won't do it.
And she said, absolutely. So I do think that the biggest advantage the White House has, and they know it, and they probably, he probably says a prayer every night, that there's not a big primary challenge, because we've seen what happens historically when presidents have primary challenges. Jimmy Carter, George H.W. Bush, it is tough for them in the general.
But when you have to...
But why is it tough for them? Right? So let's go back to this point here. This is important.
Challenge, because we've seen what happens historically when presidents have primary challenges. Jimmy Carter, George H.W. Bush, it is tough for them in the general.
But why is it tough for them in the general? Because it shows the American people that the incumbent president didn't do his job well enough. Didn't do his job well enough to the point that people had to primary challenge him. And I've said this before, and I do want to say this again. RFK Jr. and Marianne Williamson may not win, but if we're looking at the polls, RFK Jr. could hurt Joe Biden just enough that Joe Biden would lose the general election. That's the example he's given with Jimmy Carter. That's the example he's giving with George H.W. Bush. You had the Ross Perot, right? That did not help out George H.W. Bush. He lost. Ross Perot got like 18% of the vote, and he ran as an independent. Ted Kennedy, primary challenge, Jimmy Carter. No, Ted didn't win, but neither did Jimmy Carter. So just keep that in mind.
You have to rely on this patchwork of constituencies. And we have to also remember that President Biden won election in really unique circumstances that were favorable to him. He didn't have to be out on the trail every day during the height of the pandemic. He was able to hold these small events, speak to union workers, do these events and campaign in a style that really worked for him. It's a different ball game this time around. Yeah.
he had small events because people didn't want to come and see him. I'm sorry. He held an event here in Boston. Bernie held events here in Boston. Bernie had over 10,000 people come out to see him. I know I was one of the people. I was there. 100 people showed up to see Joe Biden. He had small events because people did not want to see him. The energy was not there. People were not pumped up and excited to see Joe Biden. They just were not.
And I don't know, Kara, if young people are going to be placated by just having some social media influencers touting the president. I mean, they really want him to respect their policy choices and to feel as though he supports them.
Right. I mean, it's probably different than bringing Olivia Rodrigo out to tell people to get vaccinated and take COVID precautions. I mean, I think some of these issues are much weightier than what we're talking about here, about reproductive rights, about trans rights. And that is a significant concern to voters of that age.
And that is what they're going to try to use to fearmonger people. If you don't come out and vote for Joe Biden, they're going to take your reproductive rights away. They already start taking them away. You don't come out and vote for Joe Biden, Republicans are going to do this, this, and this, and they'll just continue to play this game. Now, speaking of coming out and voting for Joe Biden, I saw a pretty cringe video. There are politicians trying to find a way to excite young people also to come out and vote. So Joe Biden tweeted this. Actually, I don't even think it's Joe Biden tweeting from this account, but it says, we have a few new folks joining the team to help get our message out across the country. You'll be hearing a lot more from them soon. Let's finish the job. Guys, hold on to your seats for this one. This one is pretty cringe.
I'm on Team Biden-Harris.
I'm on Team Biden-Harris.
I'm Governor J.B. Pritzker, and I'm on Team Biden-Harris.
Joe Biden rocks.
Joe Biden has been a steady hand. Joe Biden delivers.
I'm Chris Murphy, and I'm on Team Biden-Harris.
I'm on Team Biden-Harris.
Joe Biden is driven.
Joe Biden is transformational.
Re-electing President Biden is a BFD.
Is a what? Let it go. Hold up. Wait a minute. Re-electing Joe Biden is a BFD. This is so cringe. They really think this sells.
I'm Gavin Newsom. I'm proudly on Team Biden-Harris.
Oh, look, it's the actor. This is what I call Gavin Newsom. Doesn't Gavin Newsom look like he could be on a soap opera instead of a politician? Watch out for that one. He might try to sneak his way in the White House.
I'm Phoenix Mayor Kate Gallego.
I'm Congresswoman Diana DeGette.
I'm Grace Mang.
Soy la congresista Silvia Garcia.
I'm Brendan Boyle.
And I'm on Team Biden-Harris.
I'm happy to be on Team Biden-Harris.
I'm on Team Biden-Harris.
I'm with Team Biden-Harris.
I'm on Team Biden-Harris.
I'm on Team Biden-Harris.
Joe Biden? Oh, he's ready.
Honey, this has got to be acting. Like, look at this. They're on Team Joe. Are you? No. Like, who? I just need to know. Who's the marketing person? Who came up with this idea? It's cringe. It's cringe. But Joe Biden is losing support among young voters, which is no surprise to me. Good luck, Joe. I'm going to go to some of the comments here. Thanks for the super chat, Bryce. They don't want Trump is probably why they are voting Biden too. Yep. JB says, what about third parties and independents? They always count them out when it comes to support. They don't even mention us. Deneen, they aren't excited about seeing someone old enough to be their great grandpa in office. Thank you for the super chat. Roger, no Zoomer knows who these politicians are. No, they don't. Through my lens, the music is terrible too. Yeah. I don't know who is picking this stuff. Like, this is bad. Bad, bad, bad. I'll take the comment on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you so much for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. That con district is mostly in North Nassau County, Long Island suburbs, right above mine. Only a little sliver is in NYC, Queens. I'm 99% sure it would be Governor Hochul that would fill that seat and then run a special election. Also, the Dem running for that seat, former state senator Anna Kaplan, sponsored the bill that became law, allowing for government to censor social media, plus didn't sponsor the New York Health Act. That one doesn't surprise me. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Dave Burt. And thank you for the tip on Rockfin, JVB. And thank you for this tip as well, Roger. Sab did the cardinal sin of skipping over my Generation X. I'm sorry, Roger. You went from Zoomers to millennials saying they don't come out to vote. Understandable, because they are out doing young people things, while millennials are working, tending to their kids, and don't have time to pay attention. While the boomers vote because they're retired and got time. What about us? LOL. Gen Z are the soldiers needed to push congressional ballot initiatives. Citizen ballot initiatives. They are primed and ready. I agree. I could hit the ground running with them. I agree. Okay, we're going into our final story here. If you have not heard, there is a huge announcement that has come from Tucker Carlson and Elon Musk pretty much at the same time. In a sense, yes, Tucker Carlson was removed from Fox News. I told you he's probably going to go on to do something different, but that we would see him again. As he mentioned in a previous video, I'll see you soon. He was not joking around. And it turns out that Tucker Carlson is collaborating with Elon Musk to do a show on Twitter. Let's get into this tweet and the video from Tucker Carlson, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the updates here and where Twitter is actually going to go. I think you might find this pretty interesting. Elon Musk says on this platform, unlike the one-way street of broadcast, people are able to interact, critique, and refute whatever is said. And of course, anything misleading will get community notes. I also want to be clear that we have not signed a deal any kind whatsoever. Tucker is subject to the same rules and rewards of all content creators. Rewards mean subscriptions and advertising revenue share coming soon, which is a function of how many people subscribe and the advertising views associated with the content. I hope that many others, particularly from the left, also choose to be content creators on this platform. So Tucker Carlson is starting a show on Twitter. Let's hear his announcement.
Hey, it's Tucker Carlson. You often hear people say the news is full of lies, but most of the time that's not exactly right. Much of what you see on television or read in the New York Times is in fact true in the literal sense. It could pass one of the media's own fact checks. Lawyers would be willing to sign off on it. In fact, they may have. But that doesn't make it true. It's not true. At the most basic level, the news you consume is a lie of the stealthiest and most insidious kind.
Did you hear that part right there? Most of the news that you consume is a lie. The things that you can say when you no longer work for the network, like he's now able to admit these things. And this is what we've been telling you, those of us in independent media, that it's biased, the narrative is flawed. Someone has to sign off on those stories, and sometimes they are removed. Let's go on. This is interesting.
Facts have been withheld on purpose, along with proportion and perspective. You are being manipulated. How does that work? Let's see. If I tell you that a man has been unjustly arrested for armed robbery, that is not, strictly speaking, a lie. He may have been framed. At this point, there's been no trial, so no one can really say. But if I don't mention the fact that the same man has been arrested for the same crime 6 times before, am I really informing you? No, I'm not. I'm misleading you. And that's what the news media are doing in every story that matters, every day of the week, every week of the year. What's it like to work in a system like that? After more than 30 years in the middle of it, we could tell you stories. The best you can hope for in the news business at this point is the freedom to tell the fullest truth that you can. But there are always limits. And you know that if you bump up against those limits often enough, you will be fired for it. That's not a guess, it's guaranteed.
So let's talk about some of those limits that he may be referring to. Any type of anti-war message, although I would say he's not anti-war, he's against the war in Russia and Ukraine, not so much other ones. He was for the Iraq war, but so were a lot of people at that point in time. Anti-war message, different narrative around the pandemic. What else don't they like? Calling out the billionaires, calling out the wealth issue. They don't tend to like that too much either. Calling out certain companies like Goldman Sachs or BlackRock. You probably won't get that aired on CNN or Fox News. Anything that goes against the State Department talking points, anything that goes against the status quo and does not please the network's donors. That is typically how it works. That's the thing about working for corporate media. You think you get to say what you want, but you don't.
Every person who works in English language media understands that. The rule of what you can't say defines everything. It's filthy, really, and it's utterly corrupting. You can't have a free society if people aren't allowed to say what they think is true. Speech is the fundamental prerequisite for democracy. That's why it's enshrined in the first of our constitutional amendments. Amazingly, as of tonight, there aren't many platforms left that allow free speech.
And that includes this one that I'm sitting on right now, because let's be real, YouTube doesn't allow it either. That's why I have to tiptoe around certain things, and I can't talk about certain topics on this particular platform. I can do so on Rockfin, maybe some on Rumble, depending on Rumble has censored people sometimes too. So you got to be careful with that as well. But no, there isn't.
The last big one remaining in the world, the only one, is Twitter, where we are now. Twitter has long served as the place where our national conversation incubates and develops. Twitter is not a partisan site. Everybody's allowed here, and we think that's a good thing. And yet, for the most part, the news that you see analyzed on Twitter comes from media organizations that are themselves thinly disguised propaganda outlets. You see it on cable news, you talk about it on Twitter. The result may feel like a debate, but actually the gatekeepers are still in charge. We think that's a bad system. We know exactly how it works, and we're sick of it. Starting soon, we'll be bringing a new version of the show we've been doing for the last 6.5 years to Twitter. We'll be bringing some other things too, which we'll tell you about. But for now, we're just grateful to be here. Free speech is the main right that you have. Without it, you have no others. See you soon.
Now, I want to show you something. If you look at the bottom left-hand corner here, 25.8 million views, right? So how many views did Tucker Carlson get on Tucker Carlson tonight? What was about 3 million viewers while he was live or whatever? Twitter is a larger platform. You reach so many other people, which is why when I asked Kim Iverson if she would be the one willing to host like a primary debate with like RFK Jr., Marianne Williamson, Kim said she thinks it should be even bigger. It should be on something like Twitter. This is why you will get more views there. Now, there's more going into this. I want to get into that, I think, a little bit later. Let me finish up the Tucker conversation, and then I'm going to tell you what else is coming along with this, because it's not just Tucker hosting the show on Twitter. But Elon is making some big changes. But first, I want to tell you about this video here on CNN. So they did get into this discussion about Tucker Carlson, and I want you to see how they refer to his announcement here.
Tucker Carlson announcing plans to relaunch his show, this time on Twitter. Carlson made the announcement in a video posted to Twitter.
You can't have a free society if people aren't allowed to say what they think is true. Speech is the fundamental prerequisite for democracy. That's why it's enshrined in the first of our constitutional amendments. Amazingly, as of tonight, there aren't many platforms left that allow free speech. The last big one remaining in the world, the only one, is Twitter, where we are now.
All right, my panel is back. We also have Los Angeles Times op-ed columnist LZ Granderson and CNN media analyst Sarah Fisher is joining us as well. Sarah, Tucker went on to say that he's going to put his show on Twitter. What is a Twitter TV show?
That's a great question. I think we're all dying to find out. Twitter, of course, has character limits, but when you subscribe to Twitter Blue, its subscription service, you get a little bit more space. Now, you can add a video to Twitter, not a full hour-length video, though, Allison. That's going to require a lot of work on the back end.
Is that true? Is that necessarily true, what she just said? I'm live on Twitter right now. Do you guys know that? So the streaming service that I use, I'm able to stream on multiple platforms at the same time. So I'm on YouTube, I'm on Twitter, and I'm on Rockfin. So is that true? And I think some people may realize that you can go live on Twitter. And I'm live, maybe 2 hours every time I live stream? Twitter seems to handle that just fine. In fact, I'll show you. For those of you who are not aware. And this is the piece I'm thinking about. They may not be aware of this. I don't think everyone realizes that you can do this. This is going to look kind of funny because I'm going to screen share. Oh, I'm shiny right here. Okay. Anywho, I'm just going to share my screen real quick and show you how I'm live on Twitter. Watch this. Whee! See? There's me right there. Trump Town Hall. There's the stream. See? So a lot of people don't realize this, but I'm also live on Twitter. Okay? All right. Let me stop the screen share. I just wanted to show you that because I don't think Sabby's everywhere. I don't think a lot of people realize, yes, you still can go live on Twitter. So maybe they're just not aware of that, or maybe Elon is going to try to do something a little bit different.
I would imagine if he were to do a show, it would be truncated, so it wouldn't be that full hour that he had at Fox. And he might want to break it up, maybe put out some segments in different tweets, etc. But as I understand Twitter right now, they're going to have to race to build that type of functionality to get a full hour-long show there. Although they do have live functionality. So if he wanted to go live and put a Twitter show up, I think that would be possible.
That's probably going to be the best option for him to do. I would go live. But even if he doesn't go live, millions of people are still going to watch that show.
Okay, that's interesting. Tucker, you're also reporting, Sarah, that Tucker is accusing Fox of fraud and breach of contract. So how does he say they defrauded him?
So basically what he's saying is that Fox executives, with sources tell me are Fox's chief legal and policy officer and Rupert Murdoch himself, made these promises to Carlson, basically saying, look, if you hand over your personal communications, we'll safeguard it, we'll make sure that it doesn't get leaked. And then he's now saying, well, look, it's been leaked, it's been reported on in the media. And so you have then broken a verbal promise to me, and that, Carlson's lawyers are alleging, is a breach of his employment contract because the terms of an agreement between the employer and the person who is working for the company have changed. Now, of course, that was up to a court. That will be up to a court to decide whether or not that's actually going to be considered a breach of his contract.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah, very much. Let me bring in our panel now. Josh, they have to hand it over in discovery? I mean, why is Fox responsible for that? They can't be responsible for all leaks.
Well, I mean, there's a number of accusations in this letter to Fox, including that he claims that one member of the Fox board told him that it was a condition of the settlement that they would fire him. Now,
something Dominion has denied.
Dominion and Fox have both denied that. It doesn't make sense as something for Dominion to demand because Tucker was not even really at the center of their allegations. It was more about Maria Bartiromo and Jeanine Pirro and various other people. And Dominion doesn't get any real financial gain from them firing Tucker Carlson. So I think first thing I would say is just because Tucker Carlson has accused Fox of doing certain things in a letter doesn't mean that he's done all of them. Now, obviously, a lot of people have been speculating about various materials that have gotten into the media since Tucker Carlson's firing, including that text message in which he is commenting on this riot and saying, well, this is not how white people fight, and that Fox's concern was that people were going to find out that Tucker Carlson was racist and that was why they fired him. The idea that Fox was behind those leaks, I do not find that idea crazy, given.
The mustache is giving me Super Trooper vibes. Have you guys ever seen that movie, Super Troopers? It's giving me like the Super Trooper vibe.
Some of the ways that Fox has dealt with departing talent in the past, but I think this is all an effort to get out of his Fox contract, and that's been clear in the news coverage that Tucker wants to be out there in the arena. He's not allowed to go and do another show unless Fox lets him out of his contract, and so far Fox has been continuing to pay him. They can keep him under contract until after the next election.
I guess the bigger.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Just thinking about the fact that you may not be able to do another show until after 2024. That's crazy. You guys seeing the Super Trooper vibes? Someone said Reno. Lee said Reno 911. That's what it reminds me of, kind of. Yeah, I could see that. Brent said yes, Sabs. Yeah, I see, like Super Troopers or something. Huh.
Your question, guys, is what does this mean for the world? What does this mean for the world? If he doesn't have his powerful platform on Fox, which is a powerful platform, and it's on Twitter, does that, suddenly reduce his power?
I mean, I think his power has been so greatly reduced. Like, to say that you even have a Twitter show, we're all asking what that means because it's not a thing. Like, I upload videos of my dog. My dog does not have a Twitter show. So I think, this is a man who has been embarrassed publicly, has lost his job publicly. This feels like a last gasp in the same way that Elon Musk owning Twitter feels like the last gasp of trying to be relevant. It's a dying social network, like no one knows who's verified. The people who are verified are now unhinged. I just don't see what he gets out of this. And his audience is largely older, doesn't know how to have two-factor verification, especially not using their phone. So I don't see this as some great comeback. I see this as just diminishing returns in every way and embarrassing.
I think that's...
Let's talk about that for just a second. This could be a hit or a miss, right? Some people may say, yay, this is going to be awesome. I'm definitely going to tune in. What about the people who don't watch, streaming content, don't have a Twitter account, do not want a Twitter account, and are not willing to create a Twitter account just so they can watch Tucker Carlson tonight? What about those people, right? Like, there are people who just don't want to be on Twitter. So that's a factor. So this can go one of two ways. This can actually really take off and be super successful, right? And it could take off within like the first month or two, and then it could die down. You never know. We never know when something is new, right? Or it could be a complete disaster because of the fact that some of his viewers who watched him religiously are not on Twitter and refuse to get on Twitter just to do that, right? So these are things that you need to think about. And there's more. Because this is not the only change that Elon Musk is going to make. There's also talks of him bringing a dating app to Twitter. Could you imagine? I told a friend of mine, I said, look, try to date people on Twitter if you want to. You guys have fun with that. I said, I'm so glad I'm married. You might end up with a Fed. Like, I don't know what to say. But yes, he wants to bring a dating app to Twitter. And then also, Elon Musk really wants to make Twitter a one-stop shop, meaning everything you can do from there. So it's like YouTube meets Twitter meets dating apps. So you'll have shows on Twitter. You'll have dating services on Twitter. I'm sorry, that was still funny to me. You have dating services on Twitter. You'll be able to write articles on Twitter, similar to how people do this via Substack. So he's trying to make it so that you will only want to come to Twitter and you'll stay there and handle all of your business there instead of going to all these different platforms to do different things. Now, again, this could be a hit or a miss. Some people on Twitter only want to read their Twitter feed and just tweet. That's it. Some of them don't want all this extra jazz. They may not want a talk show, right? They may not want to see a dating app. They just want to retweet people. So we'll have to see how this works. But it should be interesting. We're going to play a little bit more here, and then we're going to go to the next clip.
It's interesting, but I would also just caution that reports of his demise and of Twitter's may be premature because, Tucker, I think, does have a grip on a large portion of America. And they, I mean, if you read the comments under his announcement, people are like, can't wait, the hell with Fox. Like, they're ready to go wherever he's going.
Which is why the question about power we need to first define how are we defining power. Yes, he lost the power that he got from being on Fox, but what other power does he still have, and how is he going to use that power? Because as we saw, Fox was just one aspect of his influence. He's influenced in a lot of different areas in terms of everyday life. And while he may not have the same audience size on Twitter, he may not need the same size to have a similar or greater impact. So as we discuss this, power isn't simply about Twitter followers or simply being on television. Yeah. Power is what's happening in those rooms where it happens.
Well, one of the
Okay, so that piece there was interesting. Another clip I want to show you as well, because there's a little bit more that goes into this, because I told you again, I said it can go one or two ways. Well, the perpetual shadow ban said, I don't think Musk is too worried. Last time I checked, the video of Tucker's announcement had over 100 million views in less than 24 hours. His 8 p.m. slot on Fox News averaged 3 million an episode. So, yeah, I mean, it can go one of two ways. But I want you to hear. Oh, did I put this on here twice? I think I did put this on here twice. Whoopsie. I did. Oh, I think I meant to put the other thing on here. Shoot balls. Let me take this off the screen. I messed up. Balls. Oh, that wasn't the checkmate one? I thought that was the checkmate for mainstream media. Yeah, checkmate. So I'm going to show you this in just a second. But the other thing that I wanted to mention too, in reference to him changing Twitter and making it, like a one-stop shop, so to speak. Ad revenue is going to be a part of this as well. The same way we have ad revenue on YouTube, he's bringing that to Twitter. So for some people, they've already changed their accounts to where you'll see follow, and then you follow them, and then you'll see a button appear that says subscribe. And you can subscribe to that person just like you do on YouTube. And he's also going to bring in the ads. Now, here's the thing. This is where some people might not like this. That's why I said it can go one or two ways. Some people probably don't want to see these ads. Some people are like, how dare you bring these ads over to Twitter? And there are Twitter ads, but you can remove them. But this will be different. But this concept of Tucker Carlson doing this show on Twitter, whether it's a hit or miss, this is essentially, and I love this here, a checkmate. Thank you, Tonya, for this picture. A checkmate for mainstream media. So here's Twitter checking mainstream media right here. You got to love that. Got to love it. So we'll see what happens. We'll see. I love this comment here from Red. Elon trying to make Twitter the Walmart of social media. Yes. Oh, man. This is a doozy. Let's look at that poll, though. Go ahead, Eric. Let's bring up those poll numbers. How did you feel about that town hall? And we can talk about this tonight on Call In. Was the CNN town hall good or bad for Trump? 3% of you said it was bad for Trump. 82% of you said it was good for Trump. Wow, that's a lot. And 15% said not sure. So that is interesting. Interesting. And yeah, we're going to talk about it on Call In, though. Eric, I think we still got a couple of super chats that I didn't get to yet. And I'll be back. I'm going to take a really quick break. I'll be back and we'll shoot one over to Call In.
All right. Here we go. All right. This is the part of the show. We give Sabrina a little break. And then we're going to come back into the Call In. Let's see if I can find that right Call In link, and we'll take a look at what's coming up. You can bring Call In up on your browser. or you can bring, here we go, let's show that. Or you can install Callin on your smartphone, search up Sabby Sabs, and it should come right up. Tonight, the central topic is Trump Town Hall, but of course you can talk about any of the other topics, or you can talk about really anything you like on the old Callin. We want to hear what you got to say. Let's see. And like Sabby said, we got a few chats we can take a look at here. Let's see. All right. From Notori. I don't like Tucker, but I love the fact that he has different guests on his show. I will be watching. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a thing. You know, I mean, Tucker's had Jimmy Dore on. He's had Max Blumenthal on. Once he gets going, we're going to have to start a campaign to get Sabby Sabs on Tucker. And you know, he talks to different people, and, you know, he ain't perfect. I like to say Tucker's no hero. He's a strange bedfellow, you know, that, you know, we agree with him on some things and other things not so much. Let's see. Thanks for the super chat, Mr. Doug 41. He says, Trump 2024. He revitalized me to vote for him. He's not afraid of anyone. Did anyone think a New York jury was going to find him innocent? Won't work. Thanks for that, Mr. Doug. And we had JB Font here in the chat. Hey, JB, this sounds just like when they discounted Trump and said he wouldn't become president. Trump then, well, yeah, talking about the CNN panel, talking about how, Twitter's dying, and, you know, as if CNN is on the rise. The best thing that happened to CNN lately was this town hall with Trump. You know, it's the best ratings they've had, you know, in a long time. And thanks for this super chat, Roger Meadows. Don't see it as a comeback. I don't see CNN as a comeback. Thanks for that, Roger. And JB Font also coming in saying, yeah, this could be the nail in the coffin for the mainstream media. Yeah, you got to kind of wonder, what do they have left? I mean, Tucker was like their top ratings getter, and they booted him to the curb. And yeah, you got to wonder. Let's see here. Yeah, so we had this. What was the earlier story? Yeah, talking about Biden and the youth, and I mean the thing about this whole story is whether it's Biden or Trump or whatnot. You also have these potential investigation into Biden and when back from when he was vice president, and the whole Ukraine and Burisma, and I think that thing might have legs, and so. Who knows where we're going to end up with. But the main thing is if all we end up with is Democrats and the Republicans, then, we're going to be in the same stew. And so, we need to figure out a way to kind of to start with this stuff and then pivot the conversation onto what really runs things, the big money, the billionaires, the corporations. And you'll notice that the Democrats and Republicans never really talk about those things, and you sure as heck don't hear about those things on CNN and MSNBC. The real challenge of this new Tucker show may be, will he really start talking about the billionaires, and start talking about the mega corporations, talking about whether, I don't know if he's going to talk about, whether or not these big corporations should be broken up when he's on Musk's Twitter, but we'll see what he does. And then the other thing that I need to mention while I'm here is that, okay, so tonight, after coming up next, and Sabby will be back here shortly, and then we jump over to Callin. Tomorrow night, it's not going to be Callin, but it's going to be a show actually hosted by me and Corey. Let me show that. We're calling Forum 11, or the second Forum 11. And this is where we get a panel of interesting people together and try to talk about some things, outside of the news cycle, talk about more of some of these big issues and whatnot. And so this panel is going to be myself, as you see here, Corey, Ms. Sabby Sabs, and Kit Cabello is going to join us on our panel. I think it's going to be really interesting. So this is going to be tomorrow night. Let's see. Let's answer. Wait. Let me get the right click point here. Yes, Bad Cookie saying tomorrow. Yes. So this will be right after the Sabby Sabs show. We're going to transition. This will be on my channel. I'll give you the link and everything like that tomorrow, and we'll transition over. We'll see how many of you want to come over and hang with us. And kind of the theme I have in mind is a concept I'm calling "Do the Pivot." And thanks, Gamer. He says, "Yeah, cool lineup." Yes. I think so. Yeah, good guess. And so the of course I'll talk about this. We'll talk about this hopefully tomorrow. But the do the pivot concept is kind of this idea of talk about anything you want. Talk about Democrats, Republicans, or even other hosts and people in the scene and whatnot. But then pivot it over. Then go over to what are the real issues. What's really controlling things. And of course, I always bring it back to the big money in politics and having to deal with our corrupt so-called representatives, how they represent the big money and don't represent us. And if we're looking at those things, then you go to what do we do about it and whatnot. And here we go. Just don't talk about what you want for 10 hours. I don't think, okay, Cookies. I don't think it'll quite be 10 hours. Or we'll see if we see Cookies in the chat. And we'll see what he's got to say. But anyways, that's the, I think he's talking about Colin. Okay. He's saying be courteous of other callers. Yes. And he's talking about Colin coming up. I know it's tough when you're up here and you glance at the chat and you see these you see these chats go by, and it's Brent saying, are we allowed to drink and smoke during your show? I'm gonna say yes. I'm gonna say, I'm an open, liberal lefty type, so I'm not gonna put restrictions on what you can do while watching or consuming the show. I'll give you that one. All right, so that'll be tomorrow. You get a little more Sabby Sabs and even some Kit Cabello. But now, you muted. But now we're going to transfer into Colin.
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah. So tomorrow night we'll be talking about solutions, guys. So we've done this before, and really good time.
Kid in on it. Let's see what he's got to say.
Yeah, the Kid Master.
See you's around. Oh, and Mastermind says nudity is mandatory. We'll work on that, Mastermind. All right.
Oh man, that's interesting. All right, we're gonna head on over to call in, guys. Tonight we are going into episode 104, Trump Town Hall. I made it very simple. What are your thoughts on CNN's Trump Town Hall? That's it. And of course, we can talk about other things we discussed tonight as well. Really want to hear your thoughts tonight. So let's do it. Tomorrow, Norm Finkelstein will be here at 8 p.m. Eastern time. I have a lot to talk to him about, so it should be a great discussion. Don't miss that. And we'll head on over to call in. All right, guys. So you know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.